I'm Casey Calvert.
I'm Leanna Lovings.
I'm Corey Chase.
I'm Bree Mills, and you're listening to the Adult Time Podcast.
What are your earliest memories of sexuality in terms of like what you saw in media, pop culture, or how it might have influenced you?
100%. I can think of a key thing. Growing up, I remember I really loved the Pussycat Dolls. I really loved like MTV music video girls. I loved the way they danced. I loved like all of that type of stuff. I mean, I really was into just kind of like really intense feminization like figures. Like I just really liked all of that. I loved how the Bratz dolls looked, and like oftentimes when I dress, sometimes I'm like, okay, do I look like a Bratz doll? Okay, sick. Then we can, like it's like one of those things. So I remember when I was younger, I had a big party. And I remember everybody was in their pajamas, and it was a nice party. We rented a hotel room, and we had like this whole thing. And all the girls are all normal in their pajamas, and I'm the only one like in my bra with my pajamas open, like posing in front of everybody like this, like Pussycat Doll style. And I remember seeing that later on, when my stepdad showed that to me, my mom, and I was like mortified. I couldn't believe that. I was like, why wouldn't you guys stop me and say, hey, Lily, like but they viewed it as like innocent and cute, and it wasn't anything that was bad. But I just always remember kind of doing things like that. I remember going on chat roulette when I was in middle school. Like me and my girlfriends, we'd be like, okay, we're going to dress up tonight and flash dudes on, Anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we don't need to talk all about that.
Yeah. But it's so you mentioned that sort of strong, like hyper feminine, but strong women were kind of what you gravitated towards. Why do you think that is? What's like the origin of that for you?
I don't know. I don't know. Like random things just pop into my mind. Like I always thought that like Eva Longoria and like Christina Milian were so beautiful. So when I would play mermaids in the pool with my friends when we were little, like I wanted to look like those beautiful women, like big boobs, small waist, like with the mermaid tail that was like that, kind of like the shark tail sexy fish, shark.
Yes, yeah.
Like that. Like I think growing up, we saw figures like that. And I think I was like, that's a beautiful woman, or something that emulates a woman, and I want to be womanly like that. Yeah. Jessica Rabbit. I mean, there's so many different types of things like that we see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was what are some earliest memories about self-pleasure, or sort of discovering yourself in that way?
So I remember someone telling me that I can masturbate and I can, put things inside me and they would make me feel something. But what's so interesting about that is they don't, because I don't come from penetration. I come from my clit. So, at a young age, I'm trying to shove different household objects inside me. And I'm like, nothing's happening. I don't understand what's happening. Then finally, when I touched my clit, I went, oh, that's what's happening. But for so long, I didn't know. I thought I was just supposed to be putting things up there.
Yeah. That's it. And was I know, like I remember in my experience, it was like a good number of years before I actually had an orgasm, and it was sort of like this eureka moment. Was that for you a sort of similar experience, or was it something that came, no pun intended, fairly quickly?
I don't really remember my first orgasm, which is shocking. I feel like I should. I feel like one of my first orgasms, I remember having a lot of wet dreams. Like I would have like some of my most intense orgasms I've ever had have been while I'm sleeping, which I don't think I'm even touching myself when that's happening. Have you ever had that happen?
Not that I can remember, but do you remember what you were dreaming about the next day?
Yeah. Like I remember when I was growing up, and this dream I remember specifically, I had a dream that James Dean, the porn star, which now, but then I had a dream about him that he was a ballet teacher.
Oh yeah.
And because I was going through ballet and I had a male ballet teacher, and that was that. So I remember always having that dream.
Yeah. Interesting. Maybe something to like recreate one day as a ballet themed fantasy.
Yeah. No, exactly. It'd be really, really cool. I have that kind of fantasy to do. And I also have like a ceramic fantasy, like spinning
ghost?
on the wheel.
Oh, spinning. There you go.
Like someone behind me, and then it gets all messy with the clay.
Yeah. Nice. All right. Well, we'll bank those for later to discuss. What do you think are some of the biggest myths about female sexuality?
Well, to speak about like what we just talked about with shoving things inside, like a lot of guys think that they can just have sex with a girl by just fucking her.
Mhm.
And I always say this to people at Exoticas, like different conventions. I like to say to men all the time, if the woman is not stimulating her clit, or anybody, if you are not stimulating the woman's clit, you're basically just a hole for you to jack off inside them.
Mhm.
Like
Mhm.
it's not really, and 10% of women or 50%, they can come from penetration, but I would say that most can't.
Mhm.
So it's so important to be hitting those pleasure spots.
Yeah. Which starts by understanding them, which I think is a big issue that we
Mhm.
have, where because there's such a lack of, especially like positive pleasure focused sex education, you're sort of taught medically what happens, but otherwise you don't know, right?
No.
And then you're kind of left to just what you discover on the internet, which without context can be quite problematic.
Yeah.
So like, from those sort of from your initial exploration with your own sexuality, where you were kind of just trying to do what other people told you and realizing, hey, this doesn't work, and hey, is there something wrong with me,
Mhm.
to the point where you really started to discover what worked for you. What are some of like the eureka moments that you had that helped you along that way, helped you along that journey?
Tumblr.
You're not the
was
first person to mention Tumblr.
So it's a big one.
R.I.P.
That was a big one that really opened my eyes for so many things. I mean, I started reading so many eroticas that
Mhm.
people wrote, different clips and, different comment threads where people are talking about things, So that was a big way that I started to just learn about things for
Mhm.
sure.
Mhm.
And then also I started sexting a lot and talking about different things. Yeah, I started sexting pretty early on. I really enjoyed doing that. But I also started doing chat roulette really
Right.
early on. I think about chat roulette and I'm like, that was almost like my startup of camming, because then I started camming and I
Right.
remember being like, this is kind of like, yeah.
Yeah, well, because that was all like spontaneous exhibitionism,
Mm-hmm.
right? That was essentially what it was being used for. Yeah.
Huge exhibitionist. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And was that the first time you sort of discovered that exhibitionism was sort of a kink that you had?
Yeah, I would say so. But I didn't know it.
Yeah.
It was more just like, oh, I like this attention. I mean, I'm a big attention whore. I like attention. I think it's fun. And then it's fun to a point. Like then there's some times where I'm like, I don't want to be perceived. But you can't pick.
I guess it goes with like being the mediator, and also
Yeah.
right? You're going to put yourself in the middle of everything, especially if you need to diffuse things.
Yeah. Remind me, what was I just saying? What was
Well, you were talking about some of the big, like your own learning curves that you
Yeah.
experienced from that, starting off doing what you thought what you were supposed to do,
Mhm.
realizing it didn't work, to the point where you realized what did work for you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess I just started to learn my body. I would say I really started learning my body probably later on. I mean, I feel like I really knew myself sexually when I was like 19, but I didn't at all. Like,
Mhm.
I thought I started to. And then, I mean, really like my biggest sexual journeys and all the things I've learned about myself have been in the last like 4 to 5 years.
Yeah.
I would say.
What did you think you learned when you were 19?
Well, I learned about some fun few things. Like I remember me and my ex sitting across from each other and trying slapping for the first time. Like I hit him and then he hit me, and then we went a little harder and then tried like doing that more and more. And then it got like, like kind of animalistic. And then eventually we were having sex. Like we just tried so many different fun little things like that. Like we tried, he bought me a Hitachi and tied me to a chair. And, we did. I remember he also would get so upset. Like he wanted to always make me come. He would do anything to make me come, but he'd be down there for like 40 minutes and nothing was happening and I wasn't able to communicate. Now I'm really able to communicate. So I'd be like, it's just not working. But then I would go and masturbate alone. And if I was masturbating alone, he'd come in there and be really mad and be like, I want to help you. And I'm like, no, I just want to do it by myself. And I always felt bad about that. But it's kind of like sometimes people need their alone time.
Well, and like you said, the communication element is it's not a natural element.
No.
So it's something that you do need to learn and build confidence for, and there's no manual for it. So I can definitely understand why that would happen.
Last night, I was just like, maybe I guess TMI, but not really because we're talking about sex. But I had sex with someone that is a civilian and I've been waiting to have sex with them and I was excited to have sex with them. And so when we did, I could tell that they were very nervous and I could tell that they were in their head about some things. And so I just tried to have open lines of communication. And so I looked at him and I said, how do you like to come? And then he looked at me and he didn't really know what to reply back. And then afterwards he was like, I've never had anyone ask me that.
Yeah.
ever. And
Yeah.
I'm like, well, it's important to ask, you know, but it also can throw people off in the moment because then they're like, you know.
Yeah. Well, consent is such a huge part of how we work, especially in today's day and age, but we take for granted that it's something that in the civilian world is happening as equally, which we know it isn't. So on the one hand, it does sort of force that deer in headlights reaction, but they will never forget you.
Yeah.
They'll never forget that moment. And it probably is going to be the catalyst for a lot of self-confidence and improvement on their end. So like you set them on their journey.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. Okay. We'll look at it like that.
We'll look at it like that.
Yeah.